We will now continue with our next panel discussion titled From Ulaanbaatar to London, the Equity Investment Case for Mongolia. The session will be moderated by Ms. Ayuna Nechaeva, Head of Europe and Primary Markets at London Stock Exchange. Joining her are Mr. Odonbaatar Amarzaya, the CEO of Golomt Bank, representing Golomt Bank, and then Mr. James Rowe, partner at A&O Shearman, offering legal and structural insights on international capital raising. Mr. Geoff, BNY's EMEA market strategist, a very well-known commentator on global markets and capital raising, investor sentiment, and Mr. Javkhlan, the Chief Operating Officer of the Mongolian Stock Exchange, who has led initiatives on market modernization and sustainability finance. Please welcome all the panelists to the stage.
Delighted to present and chair this panel. I think the previous two pitches actually really provide a really good background and context to the discussion that we will be having today. So let me maybe give you a little bit more color on what is happening in terms of the government mandate to reduce single shareholder stakes in the Mongolian banks. So in 2021, the Mongolian parliament amended the banking law to require all systemically important banks to become publicly traded companies and decentralize ownership. So there is currently a provision to limit any single shareholder to a maximum to 20% of a bank's total outstanding shares. And banks have been given a deadline, which was extended from 2023 to end of 2026. But I will ask Mr. Odonbaatar to also comment on that further. But what it represents is a great opportunity, actually, for those banks to really tap the international capital market, to diversify their investor registers. The systemically important banks are already, as you saw in the previous presentation, already listed on the Mongolian Stock Exchange. So now we're talking about the international part of that, and hopefully the London Stock Exchange will be a good partner in that, and that these discussions will of course drive our further engagements, and hopefully this will create some interest among the investors and advisors in London. So I would like to first start with the introductions, and I would like to invite my panelists to spend 30 seconds to introduce themselves and also their role and what their sort of priorities are. Starting with you, Mr. Odonbaatar.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. It's nice to talk about Mongolia, not only Golomt Bank. So Golomt Bank doing like these things for last 2 years. So just 2 days, I had also a lot of meetings. So everyone asked from me what's happening in politics. So our Deputy Prime Minister here in networking session, you can ask many things from him, but I can say it's Mongolian democracy. So it's always been there, but it had never that much big impact in Mongolian business, especially Mongolian banking sector. So thank you very much.
James?
So I'm a lawyer. I've been doing it for 27 years. Despite that, it's always fun to be at events like this. It's always exciting to be part of something to help contribute to something. I think that's what our roles are on these processes. It's to help contribute to something that that's better than and greater than us individually.
Hi, everyone. I'm Geoff. I'm a market strategist and / economist with BNY. So yes, talking ahead, we have our views on things, but where we're unique at BNY is we are the world's largest custodian, and every single day we look at $60 trillion worth of assets under custody, especially many in frontier markets, and we really use that to inform our clients for where investor positioning, their sentiment is, and some asset allocation views. So look forward to sharing them with you.
Good evening, distinguished guests. My name is Javkhlan. I'm the Chief Operator of the Office of the Mongolian Stock Exchange. I've been working at the Mongolian capital market since 2011, when the partnership between the London Stock Exchange as well as the Mongolian Stock Exchange began. Thank you.
Brilliant. And I was in Ulaanbaatar in September and have met with the Mongolian Stock Exchange and with Golomt Bank and many other stakeholders, including the FRC and the Minister of Finance. And what's really clear is that there is a willingness to partner up with London as the financial center to really deepen the engagement. And I think from the LSE perspective, I've been with the London Stock Exchange for over 16 years and have worked on many dual listings from the region, from the border Central Asia, including from Kazakhstan, and some of the, one of the biggest actually fintechs from Kazakhstan, Kaspi, was listed very successfully on the London Stock Exchange. So I think there is a lot to discuss, a lot of ground to cover, but maybe let me turn to Mr. Odonbaatar and actually ask you to elaborate a little bit on this government mandate to reduce the shareholder ownership to 20%. Do you think, what are some of the reasons behind that? Do you think the deadline will be extended? And what are Golomt Bank's plans with regard to that?
Yeah, this banking law amendment is approved early 2021. So that time, all the banks, they wanted to deadline is around 2030 because all the Mongolian banks knew that it will need some more time, not only 2 years or 4 years. So since that legal amendment, all the Mongolian banks working on to sell its shares, equity, and to improve our transparency, to adopt international standard. So like these things, it always take time. So the investors in selling equity in Mongolian market is almost impossible because Mongolian capital market, small market, illiquid market. So only opportunity to sell its equity is to attract foreign and investors. So for all the Mongolian banks, not only Golomt Bank, Han Bank, TDB Bank, and other banks, they're doing these things very efficiently, but we need time. So good thing is now, day by day, year by year, all the stakeholders are understanding this. So I think this deadline will be extended. I hope it will be extended. Otherwise, it will have a very big negative impact to all the Mongolian banks, foreign relation, and it will also will have big problem for attracting more foreign funding and foreign investors. So
Yes, imagine the situation if all 4 banks suddenly hit the market and basically vying for the same pockets. And obviously that's not the ideal scenario. So you want to spread it out a little bit. Yeah. Okay. And then just touching on your point around, local market liquidity, Javkhlan, could you comment on some of the things that you are doing to build, capacity of the local market and improve liquidity and sort of the depth of the capital pool?
The Mongolian capital market has undergone a transformative period of growth and achievements in recent years. And Mongolian capital market, of course, this builds on the foundation that was established back in 2011 when the London Stock Exchange entered into the Mongolian Stock Exchange, partnered with the Mongolian Stock Exchange. And based on this partnership, we have created our technology and market rules and regulations. And a lot of things have been changed, and the partnership really set the stage for the reforms and growths that now we are seeing. So every year, it's like any other emerging market, there are challenges in our market liquidity, and as well as lack of institutional investors are the main challenge. But the market liquidity is still developing, and so we need to attract more international investors to our market, and also to deepen the secondary market trading remain important issue for our market.
So how are you doing that? What are some of the things some of the initiatives that you're...
Okay, let me share some recent developments in our capital market. First, the market itself has grown significantly, rapidly. With regards to the numbers, our market, over the past 3 years, our market capitalization has increased threefold, and the daily average trading turnover has increased almost 10-fold, as well as the market main indexes have increased 2 times. So the market is expanding very significantly. So with also secondly, our Mongolia has implemented a series of important regulatory reforms. These include IPOs of Mongolian banks, Mongolia's largest banks, as well as the further privatization of Mongolian state-owned enterprises, and tax reforms, as well as the main market rules and regulations amendments. And with regards to the tax chance, Mongolia introduced a very investor-friendly tax amendments in recent years. And for example, the dividends as well as the interest income tax has been reduced by 50%. And last year, the capital gains tax has been reduced. So until 2016, the capital gains tax will be reduced by 90%, and then 50% until 2090. So this will help us to improve the liquidity of the market. Also, we are working towards to better connect our markets to international markets. And within the framework of this, Mongolian capital market was classified as a frontier market by the FTSE Russell in 2023. And also, most importantly, we have received a very good news from the FTSE Russell recently. This is the first Mongolian company was included in the FTSE Frontier Index. Which one? It's a bank, worship bank. One of the systemically important banks was included in this Frontier Index. So we see that this is a very major milestone from Mongolian capital market and help us to attract more international investors to our markets.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. James, I'd like to, Javkhlan mentioned the reforms that are happening in the Mongolian capital market. And of course, in the UK, we have been undergoing, a very wide-ranging and fast-paced reforms. Could you comment a little bit on that? And what are some of the common points that you see in terms of, how that would help London to become a good partner for Mongolia?
Yeah, we're when we're going for reforms in the UK, we're trying to modernize the market. I think it's less the specific reforms and more what sits behind them. As part of our strategy as a country, we wish to be a global enabler and to work with other countries. I think everything we've heard today is supportive of that type of endeavor. I think partnership has been used a number of times, and it would well describe that. So the culture here is one of openness, and a willingness to engage. And I think if we look across to the development of the economy, development of the stock exchange, development of the banks, I think that's something we're very familiar with here. I mean, if we look at, if I be a bit legalistic, if you allow me, if we look around our governance structure and the rules that we have, what we're really doing is we're looking through to the underlying banks and the financial services industries, and we're looking at the rules that they apply to themselves, international standards, participation, international bodies, IOSCO, and that maturity is consistent with what we would expect in London. So it's more of a culture. There's a cultural alignment there, and I think actually, if we think, look across some of the broader things that are coming up. I mean, the energy transition and clean energy. Again, that's another theme that we're spending a lot of time on in the UK. So there's an affinity there in those themes. I mean, it's very clear to anybody who's here today, having seen the slides and looking around the room and the panel, that diversity is important. Again, that's a common theme that we share in London. So actually, I would go as far, when I go through the legal requirements in London and the regulatory requirements, I think they're quite easy to satisfy, really. And going through the evolution the market is going through is how you satisfy those requirements. So nothing over and above what the country is doing already.
Thank you. And turning to you, Geoff, how does BNY view frontier markets like Mongolia? What makes this country an interesting opportunity from the investment perspective, in your view?
Well, let's stay as up to date as possible. Right now, frontier markets, you really have to offer something. So in terms of the growth and the change, and there's something unique. I'm just going through this. Proven reserves, you have copper, coal, iron ore, and gold. Next time, for next year, personal suggestion, put rare earths on this. Right. So I think, please correct my pronunciation or wrong. Hotcore, the place in Mongolia, over 120 million tons of proven reserves and deposits. This is what all the US, Australia, China have been talking about over the last 2 weeks. And it's affecting global supply chains. So we've been talking, during the prep work about clean energy, renewables, data centers, even due to the climate. This is suddenly something new. And if companies can take advantage of that, especially for frontier markets, that's where the flow will come. But otherwise, as you've mentioned, access, things like that, which I'm sure the country is progressing steadily. But these things really stand out in the global competition for capital right now. And there's plenty of capital waiting to be deployed. And I think that's where frontier markets, they're relatively new, under-researched, but a lot of opportunities which our clients are looking for.
Fantastic. So rare earths, we need to really highlight them. I think I did see rare earths in one of the earlier presentations. I think in your presentation, Deputy Prime Minister. So it is mentioned, but as you mentioned, really putting it out to the front, because that drives the global digital revolution as well. All right. So coming back to you, Mr. Odonbaatar, why should international investors consider the Mongolian banking sector? What are you seeing in terms of the growth opportunities there? Because we know that although the country itself is not very small, the population is small. Where do you find sources of growth?
So we have small population, but very young population, agile population, tech-savvy population. And also Mongolian financial sector, more than 90% is occupied by bank. So also Mongolian economy is semi-triune economy. So that semi-triune economy, Mongolian business always need extra funding. So all these things gives us very unique opportunity for investors. And Mongolian economy, it's a small economy, but we have advantage. That means it's very easy to build, very agile. So investors have seen that previous slides, presentations, we have a lot of room to grow. So next 3 to 5 years, I'm very confident that because of the projects implemented by government and also mega projects, our economy growth will be at least 5% for next 3 to 5 years. So it gives the banking industry a lot of opportunity. So banking industry always leading industry in Mongolia in all aspects: human resources, technology adaptation, international standard adaptation, risk management, and also profitability. If you see the Mongolian banks ROE profit compared to other region banks, so Mongolian banks succeeding very well. And also thanks to that 2021 banking law amendment, Mongolian banks governance, everything is improved a lot. So maybe 10 years before it was owned by household, family-owned bank, but after several years banking reform, now Mongolian bank is becoming very profitable, transparent, managed by professionals, and investable entity. So it gives investors safe and profitable investment opportunities.
Fantastic. So if, for example, Mongolian banks, when and if Mongolian banks come to the London market, they will obviously will have to meet certain requirements. That there will be a certain level of investor expectations, and even if they are, GDI issues and they don't have to, comply with the UK governance code, there will be a certain level of standards in terms of governance that they will need to meet to be actually interesting to the international institutions in London. So James, with your vast experience in leading IPOs, what would you recommend that Mongolian companies pay attention to when they IPO in London?
There are different ways of coming to London. The assumption underlying the conversation is it will be through GDRs. And I make that statement because that then tells us what rules bite and are applicable. The governance framework around GDRs is essentially one of respecting and derogating to the corporate governance framework in the jurisdiction that you come from. So it will be Mongolian regulatory framework, the Mongolian corporate framework, assuming it's a Mongolian corporate, and the regime here will be one of disclosure, describing that framework. So the question becomes much more a question around what do investors expect, as opposed to what the rules actually require. Now, that there are some rules around the audit committee, around internal procedures and control. To the extent you comply with the local government's framework, you've got to describe that in your documentation. But we're talking in the context, I know we've got a number of industries, but in the context of banks, we're talking about regulated entities that clearly have to comply with domestic regulation. So there's almost a delta that needs to be done, a review of the standards that would typically apply to an international bank, looking at the rules that apply to Mongolian banks and identifying any differences that still exist and the journey to narrow those differences. That happens to be, from my understanding, entirely consistent with, from a strategic perspective, what the banks are looking to do anyway. So I think there's governance standards that one would expect in the UK market are going to be consistent with the development of the financial services ecosystem in Mongolia. And then to the point earlier, it's about timing. It's about, how long you need to get there. The banks are obviously still running their own businesses and need to carry on doing that. But there's a lot of compatibility there.
Oh, that's really good to hear. There might still be some structural challenges in terms of the settlement and the process of dual-listing GDRs. And I wanted to ask Geoff, what can you comment on some of the maybe custody arrangements and what needs to happen to ensure that there is sort of smooth cross-border access for investors investing in Mongolian banks?
I'll actually just follow up on what James just said in terms of the governance. What clients are expecting investors in terms of corporate actions, votings, and all of that is really essential to building trust over global investors. They really need to be treated as the same. And once you have that governance framework in place, backed up by legal support, that is one of the critical components. Otherwise, some other challenges. If you look at remittance of funds, for example, ability to move money on cross-border basis, establish that settlement framework for local dealers, broker dealers, and to buy and sell securities, and depository, the custodians to remit proceeds between onshore and offshore, cash, all of that's essential as well. And third, so what we are looking at, so free of payment transfers for local shares between the broker and the depository of the local custodians, and also look at the speed that you can engage in all reforms. So discussing with our colleagues, one of our example was working with many countries in the region and also in EMEA. Take Romania, for example, in 2013, helping them then go through the same process as Mongolia is going through right now. They didn't have no regulatory basis or CSD functionality, but within the year and before the first launch of the DR, which was the same year, they had all of that in place as well. So love to partner with relevant authorities in this process.
Can I just I'll be there for you. I'm sure everybody knows. For those who don't know, that's a contradiction in that statement. But to trade in the English clearing systems, to settle and clear, you need an English security. Okay, so if you're a share in a foreign company, how do you do that? Well, one of the ways of doing it is putting a depository receipt program, so that you're still trading those securities under English law in the UK system. And from an investor's perspective, you need to basically have all your rights flow through. So to the extent that the local laws don't recognize some of the conditions that are necessary to allow that, one has to work through that. And I think we have worked in other jurisdictions where the local laws don't quite work. So you identify those differences. And, we have here, if I might, the government is obviously this is part of their broader strategy. So it's a question of working with the government, if there are any wrinkles, to work through and potentially even change legislation to allow that compatibility. So I don't think there's anything in there that would be problematic. It's more just a process of working through it.
Agree with that. Javkhlan, so all the attention is on you. So how willing is the Mongolian Stock Exchange to support that dual listing process and support the address some of the things that need to change to ensure the smooth cross-border access?
Mongolian Stock Exchange is willing to support all the listed companies to pursue the secondary listing on the international exchange. This is a natural next step, we believe. So this will help us improve our liquidity and also improve our visibility on the global investment map. So we fully support the dual listing of the listed banks. And we see potential in measure banks as well as the measure state-owned enterprises to go pursue the secondary listing in the international exchange. At MC, our main role is to support those companies by aligning our disclosure standards as well as market rules and regulations and technology well aligned with the international standards. And over the years, we have well prepared for this. And one successful example is that when Toronto listed company already dual listed on the Mongolian Stock Exchange successfully, and the shares are completely fungible between the markets. So in order to support the cross-border investments and facilitate the dual listing, we are modernizing our technology to facilitate these cross-border investments.
Excellent. And as far as I'm aware, you have a T+2 settlement or T+1. Is it T+2? T+2. So that's great. And then the GDRs are mentioned in the securities law, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's good to have that. Do we have any questions on the floor? Okay, there is a question at the back there. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Zohar and I'm from BSEC, which is So when we talk about bringing foreign investors into Mongolia, and then not only the GTR, but many investors are actually willing to invest into a full stocks.
I think there's a microphone coming. You don't have to repeat from the very beginning, but if you could continue the rest of your question. Thank you.
But one of the obstacles we see is actually on the custody side. So basically, many of the custodians, for example, Golomt Bank is the local custodian of JP Morgan, and then JP Morgan is their global custodian. And then they provide some of the services. But when it comes to trading of shares on MSC, then they just don't provide the equity part of those custodian services, probably because of these operations like voting right and those kind of things, or probably what other obstacles are there, but they just don't reply and they just don't correspond to us. So I think this event is a very big event to promote to the custodians, and then we want to understand what would require global custodians to come into the Mongolia, not only through GDR, but actually into the local stock exchange.
Mm-hmm. I can comment on the direct access, but would you like to maybe talk about the custody services that you provide in Mongolia? And do you plan to expand it to cover equity share trading?
Yeah, as a sub-custodian of JP Morgan, so we provide the all-around service to the market, but everything, it takes time. So I think how many years before more than 8 to 9 years before we appointed as sub-custodian of JP Morgan. So at that time, many foreign investors, they wanted to buy the sovereign bond. So that's why we opened that avenue. So since then, Mongolian capital market improved a lot. So now we are discussing with JP Morgan, not only JP Morgan, also other big custodian banks to open more avenue to the Mongolian market, including the equity transaction. So,
Brilliant. And then I've worked with very closely with a lot of the local domestic financial centers in the CIS and the CE and Central Asia, and I can definitely say that a dual listing via GDI is always a first step to familiarize global investors with the Mongolian stories. And then the challenge is then to enable those investors to trade actually and invest in the local shares directly through the local exchange. And one of the key things actually in that process, if we put aside the legal environment, and of course there shouldn't be any capital controls, there should be a trust, a notion of trust in the securities law, and shouldn't be any limitations on the repatriation of foreign currency revenues. But one of the technical things that needs to happen is the clearing part. So enabling the clearing via the likes of Euroclear or the likes of Clearstream in the local market is quite important, because that's basically what will enable foreign institutions to access the domestic market directly. And we've had those discussions when we had meetings with the MSC locally, and I've also highlighted that to the regulator. So I know we are meeting tomorrow, I think, and happy to talk through that. But as everyone's saying, this is not a fast process. All of the pieces of the puzzles need to come together, but it's all achievable. It's all all doable and feasible. Okay, so do we have any other questions on the floor? Yes, we have here. Could we give the microphone, please? Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, it's Ben Maitland from Strand Hansen. 2 questions, please. First one is for Amars. With regard to 20% shareholding maximum level in the banks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far progressed is that process in getting all the banks, below 20%? And secondly, a question for James. It's really the same question in terms of the GDR rules and regs required, to improve trading between London and Mongolia. How far progressed is that process on a scale of 1 to 10?
so you mean in end of 2026, right? The legal.
Well, really, where are we now? And you mentioned the time scale, 2026, 2030. Where are we now, and how far? How quickly will that progress?
So in end of 2026, the simple and realistic answer is highly unlikely. So, but for achieving that restriction in 2030 around, it is achievable for all the Mongolian banks. So also we expecting that the 20% restriction will be increased up to 1/3 of total equity. That means around 33%. So end of 2026, highly unlikely, and end of 2030, 29, it's achievable.
That's for all the banks, all the Pakistan banks, because I know you're quite progressed in terms of IPO preparation.
Yeah, in international IPO is in Golomt Bank's vision since I think 2010. So in 2022, we developed a very precise plan. So 2023, 2024 was our expansion year. We wanted to show investors how profitable our bank. And meantime, we adopted IFRS reporting, increased our risk management, governance, and we added highly experienced independent members. As of today, out of 5 of our board directors is independent. And also 2024, we issued international bond, which is registered in Singapore Stock Exchange. In 2025, January, we also issued green and social bond, which is registered Luxembourg Stock Exchange. Since 2023, we have been giving a lot of attention on improve our investor relations. So monthly basis, we send investor to information not only Golomt Bank, also about Mongolia. So being here is also one of part of our investor relations. So we wanted to create awareness about not only Golomt Bank, about Mongolia to investor. So not recently, just 5 months ago, we hired independent Europe-based firm to do IPO readiness assessment. So we received the report. We need to little bit improve our IFRS reporting and all other things. It was just minor finding. So also we have been discussing one of the leading bank in the world for custodian, exploring the opportunity to GDR listing in London Stock Exchange. So it will, if it goes according to our plan, soon we will be the first bank from Mongolia registered in London Stock Exchange. So
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. But in terms of a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you achieve everything you want, let's say by 2030, where would you say you are now with regard to Golomt Bank?
for 2020, 10, right? And as of today, our shareholders talking with several investors, including Japanese and Chinese, and Golomt Bank's management team also be exploring opportunity. So GDR in London Stock Exchange around 30 to 40% is also one strategy. And also we have several cornerstone investors from Europe and Japan we have. So as of today, we are on the, I could say 6 to 7, and 2013 definitely it would be 10. So.
Okay, thank you.
So I mean, London's ready is the very short answer to the question. Are our rules there? Do we know what we're doing? Are we of the right frame of mind? Yes. I think what we will need to do, and there's a lot of evidence of it happening already, whether you look at the technology, Charlie mentioned use of kind of technology. We looked at Russell indices. So it's about ensuring that actually there is sufficient compatibility between the two markets, whether that's in settlement clearing and behavior on the Mongolian stock exchange, and ensuring that having a traded GDRs alongside that doesn't have any unintended consequences, whether it's ensuring that the share ownership flows through to the to the GDRs, whether it's looking at the actual custodian arrangements in the Mongolian market so that the depository can hold the underlying shares in a custodian account in Mongolia. So there's a working together. But I'd also like to pick up on something that was mentioned a moment ago. I mean, the fundamental importance of the exercise is, yes, it's IPOs, but it's the maturity and the funding of the Mongolian economy. Okay. And the important point there is that is an evolution, and it's a familiarization with international investors of the market. So what we're seeing, and again, I'm borrowing from slides, and it's all being shown to us earlier on. You start off by issuing fixed interest instruments, so the bonds, and you start familiarizing into international investors. You'll go to you bring a sector to the market that is a kind of derivative of the economy or familiar to understand, like financial services. But by doing that and by getting investors familiar with the domestic economy, you start to open up other areas of the economy as well, potentially to international listings. So when we're talking about, and I could get myself into trouble here, but if in local law there's a set threshold that you've got to get to, if you're actually looking at the broader policy objective of getting international capital flowing to power the economy, then there's a conversation to potentially be had at some point around the timing of that threshold and actually the threshold itself, because you're trying to achieve the broader objective. And what I'm seeing in the room today is a lot of willingness impressive amount of willingness from the government, from the regulators, from the exchange in Mongolia to actually have those conversations. And I don't want to sound too dramatic about it, but there's a lot of optimism underlying that. So these are important details, but there's nothing here that I don't think we can't work for.
Agree with that. Any other questions? I think we have a couple of minutes. We started slightly late. Okay. So thank you very much for your questions. I think the tone of your last remarks was very positive. So maybe can I give maybe the final floor for the final remarks to the rest of the panel? Just maybe 20 seconds from you. Why should we all be excited about the Mongolian investment story?
As I mentioned it before, so for investors, the Mongolia, I would say Mongolian small economy, giving a lot of opportunity, unique opportunity, especially for banking sector. It's always been the leading sector. For economy, not that good, political situation changing a lot, but Mongolian banks with good governance, good risk management, always perform well. So that's my message.
And I'd say for frontier markets in general, diversification, that is really important in a market which is very concentrated right now. So if the economy itself can show that its growth is on a secular trend, can expand and limit its exposure to global trends, tariffs, geopolitics, things like that, then that's also something new. And in the resources the country has, both in terms of natural resources and I might add human resources, I think that is something new as well. Build it and it will come both financially and physically.
Mongolian capital market has a lot of potentials and opportunities, and our market is very liberal, without any restriction, with no restriction on currency movements or capital repatriation, and we do offer equal treatments to both international and domestic investors, and we have a lot of upside potentials. So we would like to invite you all to consider Mongolia as part of your portfolio strategy.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to us. And I think it's the first time I've seen the auditorium as full as this on the last panel. So that's great. And thank you so much to our brilliant panelists for your insights. And let's give them a round of applause.